Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. We bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Chris Jennings.
Joining us once again today is Tony Vandemore, repeat guest on the DU Podcast. Tony, how you doing?
I'm good, Chris. How you been?
Doing well. It's fall, so I think everyone's fired up. Everyone's, kind of getting their mindset ready. I know you guys have already got your mindset a little bit prepared, at least more than me, based on the teal season you guys just had. And I wanted to get you on here and just talk about that and, just kind of get an update of how you guys did. So how was that early teal season in Missouri?
It was pretty different this year. Our teal season 16 days, so it spans 3 weekends. And the last 4 or 5 years, the second week has been a lot better than the first week.
Yeah.
And we've actually had more teal here the week after season than we have during the season. And this year was pretty much an exact opposite. We started seeing them coming through decent numbers, end of August, early September, around Labor Day. And then the first week of teal season was low 90s temperature-wise, but it was fairly consistent. I mean, we had pretty good hunting, had quite a few around. And then the second week, we finally got the first good cold front of the fall, and we're kind of licking our chops, and it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, just didn't pick them up off that cold front. I mean, there was a full moon in that too, wasn't there?
There was, and we had 5 or 6 days that were pretty disappointing. We caught a pretty good batch the last Saturday night before season ended on Sunday. So our last day was good, but that second week was pretty tough. It was not what I was expecting, especially from the first big cold front, full moon.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a little disappointing, but I'll be honest with you, that's not surprising from what I've heard from other kind of mid-latitude states. And we had Kevin Cry with Texas Parks and Wildlife on a couple weeks ago on the podcast, and he talked about, the low production in the prairies. His assumption was that a lot of those non-nesting adult birds jumped to the coast in that first batch. So it makes sense that you guys had a pretty good start, and then it kind of tapered off through the season. So, and I'm assuming, you're probably checking the birds to see if they're adult, a female, adult juveniles. Were you seeing a lot of juveniles?
No, we weren't. I mean, that makes a lot of sense with what you said because, like I said, most years we'll see them rolling through in August, and adult males that have already bred, and they take off early, or non-breeders, whatever. Mm-hmm. But those are never the ones that we stop anyway. They'll stop for a day or two and get a drink, and they'll be in, Mexico or Texas coast or wherever before we ever open up.
Yeah. And
then it seems like the ones that we get to really stick around start coming about the second week of September, and those just didn't really materialize this year. And I assume that would be the ones that are hatched, that year.
Yeah, those first-year birds and females who raised a brood and stuck around to do the motherly duties. Yeah, I mean, that it really, and it's surprising to hear you say, not surprising, but it just makes sense based on the conversation that I've had with some different waterfowl managers and biologists who were kind of hinting towards that, but, never really committing to it. But that makes perfect sense. Well, coming out of teal season, I know for you, the job is just beginning. But, even up to before you started, before the teal season opened, I know all summer long, I was kind of following along on some of your social stuff and seeing you out in the fields and pumping water and doing. So how was the summer, like kind of honestly like the growing season up there for you?
It was good and bad. I mean, not like every year, you don't know what Mother Nature's going to throw at you. Mm-hmm. We got everything in at a decent time, and then we had somewhere in the ballpark of 19 inches of rain in 10 days. 12 inches came one night.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. We actually, we didn't have any levees get overtopped. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a big, massive, huge, total zero flood event, but man, there was a lot of surface water you couldn't get rid of. Had to do a lot of replanting.
Now, what's that do down there too, like in your bottoms area? Does that just kind of flush everything? I mean, that could potentially be a good thing, but is that something that just, hammers that area, or is it positive?
It is. It always happens. Mm-hmm. You take the good with the bad. It's not good for crops. It's great for moist soil.
Yeah.
But after that was kind of when was that? Late June, early July. It was really, really wet, but even mid July. But then it dried up. It dried up, and actually got a lot of stuff planted like the end of July, the last 2 weeks of July, which in a normal year that it's going to burn up when I've tried it that late. But this year we actually caught some rains and things look really, really good.
That's awesome. What are you planting when you say you're planting at that time?
Planted millet, buckwheat, short season corn, you name it. We planted it all.
Yeah. Is there a special blend of that stuff that you guys are using, or is it just, what you get your hands on up there, or do you have a preference?
No, it's not a blend. I plant millet, usually just Jap millet. I'll plant that in the areas where I want, Jap millet, typically the deeper areas, because it does a little bit better with wet feed. Well, I shouldn't say it does better. It does awesome. If it gets dry, as long as you don't overtop that plant, I'll start watering it when it's dry and it's basically irrigating it. Yeah. That stuff really takes off. But now the buckwheat, it doesn't do as good with wet feed. So I try to plant that at higher elevations where I'm going to put water to it later. And if we get a rain, water's going to run off of it.
I know, and as you're going through this process, and that's one thing I told you before we got on here, people really like to hear, about the habitat management process and how you're going about kind of creating these little moist soil units or whatever. What's the percentage of your moist soil to plant it up there?
In a normal year, I really don't plant much on the moist soil side. I much prefer the natural stuff.
Yep.
The wild millet, people call it barnyard grass, whatever. Wild millet, smartweed. Our seed bed up here is really dynamic. It's just full of it. If you do a good drawdown, take water off the right time of the year, you're going to have awesome groceries. And the good thing about that, it's free. But, that seed's been, I guess you could say, survival of the fittest. Genetically altered for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah.
Where, you plant Jap millet at the end of July, get a pretty decent stand, then you catch an August flood that goes over the top of it. Depending on how long that water stays over it, a lot of times that Jap millet will die. Mm-hmm. But when the water comes off, you'll still have the natural smartweed and natural millet just because it's, it's been altered that long. That's what it does.
It's designed to survive that flood.
Yeah. Yeah. And the best part about the natural stuff for me, something I really concentrate on is you can manipulate it. Yep. So I can go in and brush hog it, and then you're gonna get your bugs and invertebrates, which really I think it gets overlooked a lot. But ducks really key in on those bugs and invertebrates, especially when it's warm in the first couple 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and it pays off late in the season too, especially down here. That's what a lot of these ducks are keying in on, is that those invertebrates for the additional proteins. So as we start getting closer to the season, what time of the year do you start putting water on other than for teal hunting? Because you probably didn't put water on all your property, I'm assuming.
Well, I'm putting water on everything that's not ag.
Oh, okay.
So all of our moist soil units, I'm at least putting some water on for teal. Because A, we like to hunt teal, but B, you don't realize how many ducks migrate early.
Oh, yeah.
And this year was a prime example. It was 90 degrees the first week, but there's bunches of 50 to 100 pintails kind of all over the place. And for us, when we're bringing that water up, putting that sheet water on when it's warm like that, you're going to get a better invertebrate bloom, a lot more bugs for one, but you're also starting to stop some of them early ducks. And the more of those you stop, the easier it is to stop the ones that come later.
Awesome. Yeah, so as we creep up on the season, when you guys open up late October, is that right?
We do. We open up the 30th this year.
Yeah. Oh, man, is that later?
Well, it's actually earlier.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Several years ago, we used to open up around the 23rd of October. It used to be the last Saturday in October, and then they changed it. And last year, we didn't open up till the 7th of November. Mm-hmm. And we had that big cold front and all that snow in the Dakotas around the 20th of October. We were absolutely covered up and still had 2.5 weeks till we could hunt them.
That's a predicament.
So I'm glad that we're back to the end of October, personally.
Yeah, now you just need that snowstorm in the Dakotas again.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a far cry from it right now. It's been hot and dry.
Yeah. So What are you hearing from some of your guys up in, Canada, and people are hunting north of you? I know South Dakota opened. I'm headed up to Minnesota here soon. What are you hearing from those guys up there? Bird numbers and
Man, our guys up in Saskatchewan. I mean, it's dry. It's not terrible. Actually better than what we were anticipating. The ducks are so. You find them. There's usually a pretty good number. A lot of Canadas, a lot of cranes, a lot of snows. All that stuff looks good. But I think we all want to see a big winter up north with a lot of precipitation.
Yeah, I think that I think everybody across the board is hoping for that. Are you hearing anybody in the Dakotas running around? Are you hearing anybody running around up there? I don't think they've opened quite yet, but yeah, they may have opened last weekend in North Dakota.
Yeah, South Dakota did.
South Dakota did. North Dakota, I don't think's opened yet, especially not for non-residents. But are you hearing anybody up there who's providing any information on the ground?
Yeah, I mean they're seeing some birds, but kind of same deal. Kind of hard to know what's around just because their crops had been behind until this last 5-6 days. They've been taking a lot out. But when the crops are still in the fields and it's hot, they're not flying around a whole lot. It's tough to get a real good scout and really know what's there.
Yeah, that can make it difficult. What are you, as far as going into the duck season there at Habitat Flats in Missouri? What are you telling people who are calling you like, hey man, like how do you think the season's going to go? Like, what are you kind of saying? Oh, well, we need this or this or this.
I mean, there might not be the young birds that there are in some years, but at the end of the day, we're still well above the long-term average. And, they're going to be ducks. There's going to be ducks. They're going to have to eat. They're going to have to fly. They're going to be based on the weather. I mean, it's just another season as far as I'm concerned. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and we're still going to hunt them,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, one thing before I get you out of here, I noticed that you celebrated the National Hunting and Fishing Day last week, and you posted some pictures of you getting your daughter out to the blind. How's that experience going for you? I know you have 2 girls. I have 2 girls as well. But how's that experience going for you as you introduce them to all aspects of waterfowl hunting?
Man, it's awesome. My oldest one, she's 7 now. She's been going since she was 3. And the biggest thing, just don't force it. I mean, when they're ready to go, then pack it up and go. But as long as we've got snacks and the dog, and I mean, she's loving it. Like this year, probably the biggest dad moment of my life is we're on the way back from a teal hunt one morning, and she says, Dad, can we make this an every Saturday morning ritual where we go hunting and then we go to the lodge and eat? I'm like, oh my God, absolutely.
Yes, we can. That's fantastic. So does she have waders?
She does. She's got a pair of Cabela's youth waders that she's actually had them since she was 3. And they were about, they were way big then, but kind of growing into them a little more every year. And she loves it. I mean, she goes out there and wades around the decoys, helps set decoys, helps pick them up. I mean, that's the fun of having a kid along. And for them, you want to keep it fun. You want to let them do everything they want to do. If they want to throw decoys, go out there and throw them out. You want to go run around the water and you trip and fall and get wet, well, big deal. It's 90 degrees out. That's all part of it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's the reason why I ask, because I'm in the process of looking. I need waders for my 8-year-old and my 6-year-old. And I was just curious. I thought those were Cabela's. I'm assuming they were, but I need to look into those and see if I can get the right size for them, because that's their next step. They didn't have waders last year, so we were limited on a couple hunts. Kind of just went and then left and went and left and didn't stay out too long. They were, trying to play that timing game there. But this year, I think we're going to go full waders and the full armada out there.
Oh, man, you're going to love it. Don't forget the snacks.
Yeah, trust me, they'll remind me about the snacks for sure. Well, cool, Tony. This has been great. I wanted to get you on here and get a quick little update, how your property's looking, how your habitat's looking, and just kind of get a feel for how you saw it through teal season and then looking forward, because duck season is going to be right around the corner.
It is. It's that time of year.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining me on here, and I'll be sure to get you back on here soon once the ducks start flying.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I always enjoy it.
I'd like to thank my guest, Tony Vandemore, for jumping on the DU podcast and giving us a little update from his area and some areas north of him. I'd like to thank our producer, Chris Isaac, for putting the show together and getting it out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for joining the DU podcast and supporting wetlands conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.